Hi everybody, Cameron from Bird Barrier here with a longtime friend of ours in the bird control industry. I'm with Eric Wolf today, who is the CEO of Innolytics, which makes a great product that we've sold for a long time called OvoControl. Eric, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak a little bit about OvoControl.
How was the drive in from the desert?
The drive in from the desert is always terrible.
Should be a 2-hour drive, and it could be a 4 or 5 hour drive.
You never know.
So anyway, OvoControl is a wonderful product. It is basically a birth control for pigeons. It's kind of the simplest way to put it, wouldn't you say? That's kind of what I tell people.
Well, we affectionately call it planned pigeonhood.
Planned pigeonhood. And in a nutshell, when pigeons eat your food product, their eggs won't hatch.
That's correct. Mrs. Pigeon is going to lay unfertilized eggs.
Good, that's a great way to say it. So you have a wonderful presentation. I've seen this before, it's great. I'm going to step aside and let you guys listen to Eric as he talks about his product, OvoControl, and how to implement it at a job site and whatever else you want to tell our audience. You're welcome to it. So enjoy.
Thank you, Cameron. Today we're going to get right into it, but today we're going to talk on OvoControl. We're going to talk sales and selling. This has to do with how we position OvoControl with a customer, with a site that has problem pigeons. So with no further ado, let's go forward and just talk about the different ways that we can work with pigeons and excluding and repelling the birds. So in a kind of an overview, the way we exclude and repel birds, nets, spikes, coils, habitat modification, harassment, noise-making devices. Probably conspicuously missing from this slide, from this image, is Bird Barrier's gel, that optical gel that should be reflected in here. It's another form of harassment. It repels the birds as opposed to anything else. Now, the gold standard for excluding birds is netting. So netting creates a physical barrier to the birds, and they can't get past the barrier. Oftentimes, though, this gold standard of netting is either impractical or cost prohibitive to use in certain circumstances. So when you have that kind of scenario, people move over to abating the population of birds. So actually doing something to reduce the number of pigeons or pest birds in that environment. And there's two different options when you look at abatement. You either have to increase mortality or reduce reproduction. There's nothing else. So you increase mortality, traditionally trap, shoot, poison. We're all familiar with those methods. They've been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years in abating pigeons. More recently, we can reduce reproduction and abate the population by contracepting the birds. So providing birth control for the pigeons so that they no longer successfully breed. Therefore, you have no new pigeons coming into the flock, and you can reduce the population through this means. You can also use these things in combination. You can certainly trap and contracept at the same time. Next slide, please. So before we go into any details on sales and selling, I just want to explain a few key biological metrics about pigeons. You have to understand some basic biology about pigeons in order to effectively sell OvoControl to a customer. Pigeons are rapid breeders. They lay very typically 2 eggs. up to 6 times a year. They're laying the eggs, so they're prolific breeders. In terms of diet, they eat just about anything. I mean, anything from grain and seeds to pizza crusts. They feed as flocks, and the flock is a social unit. That's their family. They don't spontaneously leave a flock. They stay in that flock. They mate for life. And the only ones that will leave or search for a new mate are ones that lose their existing mate. If they're still in their reproductive prime, they'll go around and try to find a new mate. Their territories of these flocks, the boundaries are soft, so that they're mobile. In terms of the identifying a bird, it's very difficult just from physical characteristics to tell whether a bird is male or female. You can watch their behavior and kind of figure it out. Juveniles look just like adults, and the lifespan of a feral pigeon in an urban area is 2 to 3 years. So those are you have to keep these metrics in mind when you talk about a contraceptive program. If you have a long-lived species, say an elephant that lives 100 years or an owl that lives 75, contraception may not be the right choice of a solution to manage down that population because the birds live so long. But with a pigeon that only lives a couple, 3 years, this is a very effective solution for it. Next. So what's the big problem? Well, the problem with pigeons is not the pigeon itself, but it's what they leave behind. Each pigeon eats about 30 grams of dry matter a day. They consume 30 mLs of water, so a total of 60 grams going in and coming out of that pigeon every day. Even a modest flock of 100 birds can produce 5 tons of pigeon feces annually. So it really adds up and leaves deposits on the customer's site that in many cases they're just not able to live with. Go ahead. So sales and selling. First step before anything else is picking the right customer and site. So OvoControl is made for large industrial facilities. That's where it does best. In big, expansive facilities where netting is perhaps not the ideal solution. Go ahead. So where can you offer OvoControl? I have a list here. In just a second, I'll give you where our low-hanging fruit is. But again, exclusion is simply not an option at these large facilities. Harassment is ineffective. Pigeons are resident birds. They don't leave. They don't leave a site. Once they're breeding at a site, they're staying there for their life. They're not going someplace else. So, you know, if you have a pigeon that's attached to a site or a mating pair, you're not going to harass them away. Increasing mortality, okay, going back to those 3 things I mentioned: trap, shoot, poison, prone to risk. All right, you got the issue of dead and dying birds, and you know, if you even think about shooting at a facility like this, or a facility like this is probably not an ideal solution. Go ahead. So, once you identify the right site and circumstances, then introduce OvoControl and describe the benefits. So, what are the benefits of OvoControl? No new birds. All right, when you get no new birds, you get a gradual attrition of the population. So the population is going to go down by whatever means that specific pigeon flock is declining to begin with. So you may have predation. So there's owls and hawks and falcons that will make their lunch out of a pigeon. That'll still occur, but there's no new pigeons coming in. You also have a lot of disease. Pigeons are chronic with different diseases, and that's going to reduce the population. But overall, what we generally experience and what you can promise the customer is a 50% annual decline in the treated pigeon population. So if you have 100 birds, next year you're going to have 50 birds. The year after that you have 25 birds, and so on and so forth. You will have no dead and dying pigeons. I mean, pigeons die all the time, but none of them are going to die from OvoControl. And you have to think of this concept as a maintenance program as opposed to an installation. I mean, there is some installation required with OvoControl. You have to install an automatic feeder, but it is not a big-time installation that you install and walk away from. This is a maintenance program, and we often describe it as the general pest of the bird world. Go ahead. OvoControl is registered by EPA. It is a Section 3 registration. It's a pesticide, but it's general use, unrestricted. It comes in little bite-sized pigeon kibbles. It's an extruded bait, very attractive to the birds. It's non-toxic. You're not going to hurt anything. You're not going to harm any birds. You're not going to harm any wildlife. You're not going to harm any pets, people, or anything else. It's non-toxic. Go ahead. So the application program, what do? Well, again, establish that baiting. So you've identified the customer, you've identified their site. Now what do? Well, you use one of these automatic feeders that you get from Bird Barrier, and this is just a wildlife feeder in a different format. It triggers once a day, and we're going to give you an example of that in a minute. And you're going to place one of these automatic feeders either on we like flat rooftops, ideal. But if you don't have a flat rooftop, you can use other flat surfaces to put it on. Evaluate bait acceptance. You don't start with OvoControl. Start with pre-bait. Start with cracked corn. Feed OvoControl. Don't feed OvoControl as the first thing. You pre-bait with cracked corn. Make sure you condition the birds to come to the feeder every day, same time of day. It's got a clock and a timer that you set for the crack of dawn, once a day feeding. Go ahead. So I'm going to show you an example of this thing, how the feeder works in practice. But you have an automatic feeder. It's set to go off at a prescribed time of day, usually at first light. This is a prototype feeder we used years ago to demonstrate OvoControl usage. But this is not cracked corn coming out of the feeder. This is OvoControl bait. These birds have been conditioned to the feeder, so they know that feeder is going to go off at 6 a.m. in the morning or whenever you set it for. And it takes about a minute. You can see it count down there for the birds to pick up most of the bait. Again, it does not take long, and this baiting event occurs just once a day. And the birds have been conditioned to the feeder, meaning that they know that they go there at 6 a.m. every morning and they receive a free breakfast without too much work. So you can see 45 seconds into the thing, most of the bait is already gone. They'll stick around 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, picking up some bits and pieces of bait that's left over, but for the most part, it's all vacuumed up very quickly. One of the questions you might get from your customers is, well, what happens if another bird comes in there and eats the bait? And the answer to that is properly conditioned pigeons pick up the bait so quickly there isn't an opportunity for another bird to come in there and eat any bait. So understanding how that automatic feeder works is vital. So let's go on to the next slide. What you need to do with the automatic feeder and the baiting site is to evaluate bird numbers. So OvoControl is applied at a rate of 1 pound per 80 birds per day. So for every 80 birds, you need 1 pound of bait. You can dial that in on your feeder, make sure you're feeding the right amount of bait for the amount of pigeons that you have. So you're adjusting the application rate according to pigeon numbers. And if there's a need, you can put up a mobile camera, a trail cam, and record activity at the site. Go ahead. Again, OvoControl is not an installation. Yes, you have to install a feeder, but one or more automatic feeders for any given site. Each feeder will accommodate roughly 150 birds. So again, that need to assess bird numbers. We use a 3-2-1 rule on site visits, meaning for your planning, for those unfamiliar with OvoControl, you're going to go into that site most likely 3 times the first month, 2 times the next month, and once a month after that. So it's a monthly service program with recurring revenue. Again, it represents the general pest program for birds. So it's a maintenance program, it's not an installation. Go ahead. Recent OvoControl sites, all kinds of different places, refineries, university campuses, downtowns, power plants are good for us. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a comment came in recently from Gregory Pest Solutions in South Carolina, and I'm just going to read it for you there. I've been working with OvoControl since soon after you first put it on market. I've worked with a wide variety of manufacturing plants, including polymer, auto manufacturing, plywood manufacturing, name a few, office buildings, hospitals. I've seen that if the program is properly set up, the materials used as specified, and time is given to see the results, it works fantastically. I couldn't summarize it better than that. That's exactly how OvoControl will perform for you. Go ahead. Just to recap now, OvoControl is a ready-to-use product, comes in a 30-pound bag. There's no mixing required or anything like that. It's non-toxic, so you don't have any dead or dying birds in the area. It's a contraceptive, all right, so it doesn't hurt or harm the birds. What it's doing is unwinding the bird population. You're going to use an automatic feeder to apply the product every day. You're not going to send somebody out every day to apply the product. You have to use the automatic feeder, and that provides you with your monthly service interval. And you can use, if you want, you can use the optional digital camera system to capture all the action. Please note that the Humane Society of the United States advocates for OvoControl. So you're not, we have awards from the Humane Society, we have awards from PETA for the technology, so you're not going to get any pushback from any of the animal welfare community. Go ahead. We get quite a few questions on program costs. What's the customer going to pay for a program like this? There's 2 elements to it. It's the automatic feeders and there's the bait that's required. So feeding stations, but depending where you source them, $300 to $400 per kit. What you saw there in the video. Bait roughly $8 a pound, depending where you source the material. But that doesn't tell you much. You have to determine what the size of your flock is to figure out how many treated birds you're going to have. Just for illustration purposes, you can use 1 station with 100 pigeons, you're probably looking at an annual cost of $7,500 for that customer. Thank you for your attention on this video. I'd like to welcome Cameron back.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and I just would like to make it clear that you can reach out to us at Bird Barrier or talk to Eric and his team at OvoControl. We're both very supportive. We realize there's a lot of questions to be answered about the system and how it works and how to sell it and how to approach the customer. So please do reach out to either of us, and we look forward to helping you guys sell some bird control jobs using OvoControl.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thanks, Eric.
Appreciate it.